Hi, I'm Jeremy Kershaw with Heck of the North Productions, and on a long ride this weekend I was thinking it might be helpful to describe how I've laid out my bikepacking rig or bicycle and over the last couple years. Last year in 2017 I completed the Tour Divide in just over 22 days, and a lot of that success I felt I learned a lot from watching other people's educational videos and reading a lot of forums and learning from people that had gone in front of me. And you know what, it was pretty helpful. And so as I was laying out the route for the upcoming Heck Epic on July 20th this year, I thought, well, maybe I'll kind of explain how I've refined my style of bikepacking, and maybe you can learn something from my trial and error. Again, a lot of kind of the ethos of the Heck of the North is to use what you have and to kind of ride what you have. That being said, there's certain refinement that happens over the years, and again, I've learned a lot from how other people have set up their bikes. And there's been a ton of refinement over the years too in just bike parts and bicycles themselves. So, so we'll start there. And again, this is basically a 29er mountain bike. I did have it custom built for myself for no other reason other than I really like working with a bike builder, but there was some design aspects that I knew I wanted to have right for the Tour Divide last year, and then in future bikepacking trips too. One of the first ones was the idea of aero bars, and I chose a very simple profile design aero bar. It was just aluminum, but the design and the bike fitting that I had done were around the idea of being able to live in these aero bars to cruise. And I found that a lot of my bikepacking races and time on the tour last year, I probably spent 75 to 80% resting in the aero bars. And in fact, I even found myself climbing at 3 miles an hour in them as well, all the way up to, you know, cruising at 25 miles an hour. I can't explain, or I can't describe enough how important it is to get a setup, no matter what type of aero bars you use, that you have them arranged that you can sit comfortably in somewhat of an aero position for long periods of time, not just 30 seconds at a time, but for minutes and miles. The amount of fatigue that I was able to avoid was huge, solely because of these aero bars and being in somewhat of an aero position. So when you're designing your rig, consider how you might be able to set it up so that you can sit comfortably in this resting position where your forearms take most of the weight. In 3,000 miles, I had no hand numbness, mainly because my hands were up here and not in the drops, not having pressure put on here. So the aero stuff, again, you're hardly aerodynamic on a bicycle setup like this. But being set up like this does save a mile or two an hour, I found. And again, the fatigue factor of cutting down the fatigue is huge. And so kind of look at that when you're looking at your setup and how you can sit comfortably on top of the bars. Sitting in the general area here, for navigation, I did use kind of the ubiquitous Garmin eTrex 20X. I can't say, I think it worked fine. I have some issues with Garmin's user interface, but it was my first time working with a GPS unit, and it worked fine. But get to know a unit before you go out and use it on a trip, because I remember a time in southern Montana that I thought I erased my whole route, and I spent a half an hour trying to figure it out, and that was pretty exciting. And so get to know a GPS unit, whatever you're using. I do use just a simple cyclocomputer too as a backup, mileage and just a general day-to-day, and that's just a wireless unit set up to the spokes. I did go to a dyno hub on the front wheel. This is a Schmidt Sun dyno hub, and it powers through a cable my GPS and then my K-light, which is it has two levels, a pretty bright light. So at night, I would let the GPS run on its battery source, and then I would hook the light up to the dyno hub. But during the day, I would run the GPS off the dyno, and I'd save a ton of batteries. It doesn't charge batteries. I had lithium batteries in here, but it just, it allowed me to run and not have to buy batteries every 30 seconds. There is the whole dyno system is another video to do and some research. Again, the K-Lite is also well known now in bikepacking, as is the Sun, the Schmidt hub, a German company. And I believe that Shimano has a dyno hub too that's used. All my sleep stuff is up front, and I'm gonna just blow this open real quick so you can take a look. One of my most satisfying aspects of riding the Tour Divide and bikepacking in general, I found, is I spent every night outside except for one during the Tour Divide, and that became a highlight of the day for me, was sleeping outside, not having to find motels. I found them to be stressful, and actually I didn't sleep very well inside, and just the concept of finding public land and a safe place to lay out your bedroll at night was kind of romantic, but also I found I slept 100% better that way. And I chose to go with a bivy, and I used an OR Aurora bivy. Again, another huge debate between ultralight tents and bivy sacks. I don't regret going with the bivy sack, other than 1 or 2 nights of rain, and that made it pretty exciting getting dressed in a bivy sack. Another alternative is to use something like a Big Agnes Fly Creek tent. And I know that this has also become a kind of a standard ultralight tent for bikepacking. And I'll play around with this in the coming months too. As far as the bivy sack, I use, again, that OR. My sleeping bag is an old Down Sierra Designs 30-degree bag. The down is simply just for compressibility. And you do have to keep things dry. And I used like Walgreens or just drugstore plastic sacks, plastic shopping bags, to sometimes reinforce all of this stuff if it was looking like it was going to be really rainy. And then the pad that I used was a Nemo Tensor 20R. I side sleep a lot, and I found that this pad is really, really comfortable, and again, takes up very little room for a sleeping pad. So my whole sleep system was up front here, and I found that that worked pretty well. This was a front bag that I used for just sunglasses and sunscreen, random sandwiches, food, things that you needed to get multiple times throughout the day, but weren't very heavy. So that was a good spot to have just a little front bag like this. These bags were made by Bedrock, a US company. Speaking of bags, Sodero is a local company here just in Two Harbors, and they're made right in Two Harbors, Minnesota, and they're custom for the frame bags, and then they have kind of stock top tube bags that are super well made, and yeah, they're just, you forget about them. They're so great. Let's see, as far as wheels go, again, the main thing that people research a lot is tires. I researched a lot on tires, just what other people had used. I chose the Continental X-King Protections. Somehow in 2,800 miles, I had 0 flats. I ran tubeless, which was the first time I had done tubeless. I was kind of late to that game. But literally, I couldn't, 0 flats, no leaks. And I guess I can't say enough about them. They were ones that I would recommend. There's 3 or 4 other tires that people swear by. So anyway, they're a 2.2 though, and a fairly medium width tire. And I found it to be a good compromise for some float on the nasty trails, but also some speed when you do have pavement. And there was definitely pavement on the upcoming Heck Epic and also the Tour Divide. A simple carbon fork. I don't believe in necessarily a suspension fork for this type of racing. Some people do, and that's a personal preference. This was just a Salsa carbon fork, a fire starter. The bits and pieces, I'll kind of, a Chris King headset, just parts that I felt like wouldn't fail. A Thompson seat post. The saddle, again, is super Well, that's your choice. I've settled on the Cambrium by Brooks, and I've seen it show up quite a bit now. And again, I had zero saddle issues for that style of racing. I guess I really like it. So find what works for you. And again, one that will work with an aero position too. This top bag, I had my Crank Brothers multi-tool that I've had for years, a little micro Leatherman for pliers and scissors, and then also the USB connector for this dyno system. So it's just kind of a front handbag or a front bag for random small items. Sometimes some snacks would go in there, sunglasses, that type of thing. This I had my headlamp that I would use at night if I had to read cues or anything like that, and just a black diamond headlamp. Music became something that I don't use music on most training rides, but on longer rides I found that it was the best drug that you could ever hope for other than caffeine, as far as staying awake, raising your mood, distraction. It became critical to my sanity throughout the day. So find some music that you can listen to over and over again, and be careful with it, obviously, with traffic. That's always the main concern. So I don't use it on heavily trafficked roads, but on the back roads and really lonely trails, it was a pure savior. So have that ready in your kit. The main frame bag had my general repair kit, which was, again, kind of a video in itself, but chain lube, my toothpaste and toothbrush for my teeth repair, batteries, and bits and pieces for chain care, and about all the bolts that I needed on the bike in case one of them failed. Obviously try to keep it pretty light, and with worst case scenarios kind of at play, I used just an old Lezyne pump, and then some, who knows what ends up here, bits and pieces of bungee cords. My packs ended up, these are bungees that are made up here in Minnesota, I think, but that's what held this onto the handlebars. Back here, as far as water goes, I found that when you've got plenty of water and you're doing stream crossings and you're not looking, it's not a stressful situation. I used a MSR, I think it was a MicroShot hand pump, and I would just stop and fill up my my front water bottles as I needed. I didn't carry any extra reservoir of water, and this thing worked great. Or any small water filter where, you know, I wasn't going for I'm not going to win anything, and stopping for a couple minutes was no problem when it came to, you know, time management. Although that is important, we can talk about that in a second. When we did get into situations where water was at a premium and I knew I wasn't going to be seeing consistent water sources, I switched over to my MSR, I think it was a dromedary bag. This is a 4 liter, and I had it as basically a backup water source that I would fill these first, and I always drank out of these first. I didn't run any extension tubes from here. And when I was low on water up front, I would stop and carefully refill these bottles with my main water source right here. That was my system of doing it. I've seen people run tubes all the way up so they can just, you know, draw right from here. I found that to be a little tedious with the extra hoses involved, and so that worked for me. I think I ran, again, without any flats. I do obviously have a spare tube with me, and I think that lived down in the base there. The other side of the frame pack held some maps, small flat items for, you know, that we'd pick up throughout the day. But that was the brunt of the frame bag. The water, I could fit about 3 liters of water in this pack. Carrying it down low is probably the best place to carry water. I tried to limit what was on my back, and I'll kind of show you the pack that I use for real long distance racing, but as little on your body as possible, because you're going to be going up and down, you know, hundreds of times, thousands of times, and that just means lifting that weight. So keeping that water low on the bike is probably the best idea. Drivetrain, this was a 38 and then a 26 2x chainring. This is just a race face. And then again with a very basic Shimano XT derailleur. I think the back, the largest cog I had was a 36 tooth, and that combination worked great for every bit of climbing that I've done so far. The back is where I kind of kept all of my clothing for bike packing, and I found that to be a really good system too. In general, again, these simple grocery bags, you try to recycle them or do something with them, and I found that they did a great job of keeping things dry. This is a Revelate pack, which is water resistant for sure, but not waterproof. So if you're going to be running into several days, make sure you've got things wrapped up in dry bags or some sort of dry system. Clothing wise, I think I'm fairly average as far as what I can tolerate cold wise, but I found that I used a lot of different clothes on a summer type trip, and I wouldn't go anywhere without a neck gaiter, a lightweight neck gaiter, a long sleeve wool jersey. This happens to be a Heck one, but is a lightweight wool, and I use this at night as a warmth layer, and also in the morning I'd wake up and I'd ride with this for a few, 10 miles or so to get warmed up, and then I would keep it dry. So this was rarely used during the day, just to make sure I had a warm layer at night. Arm warmers. There was another arm warmer I swear by now, and these are sun protection arm warmers. These were made by Pearl Izumi, and they're just a white reflective, and this helped save my arms from being burned, day in, day out. So, and this is a real lightweight, and it did add a little bit of warmth too. What else do I have back here that was, sometimes I bring a vest on the tour. I don't think I did bring a vest, but I did this last weekend when I was mapping out the Epic. This is a Patagonia Houdini jacket, super, super lightweight. And I found that it was just enough wind protection and warmth to add a layer when it started to cool off. And it obviously takes up no room, slightly water resistant. One of my favorite pieces of clothing now by that company and in general. Rain jacket was mid-weight jacket, and I use this for a warmth layer too. So try to find dual or 3 times purpose on your clothing if possible. This one is made by Showers Pass, but whatever lightweight jacket that is truly waterproof, make sure you have it. And again, it's a great warmth layer. There was some debate about whether to bring full rain pants or some like knickers or something. I went with this really lightweight Outdoor Research rain pant, and I have zero regrets for that. These were, when it's really raining and cold, the extra length of the pant was very well worth it. And I also wore these in my sleeping bag at times when it was cold. So again, another dual purpose for rain pants. I think the last layer here in the very back was just stuff that I knew I was going to wear at night. I wore, the big debate on sometimes is how much stuff do you bring? I wore 1 pair of cycling bibs for 3,000 miles of riding, and in general, which was a little crazy, but I still don't regret that. Again, just a lightweight cycling jersey, a short sleeve is my basic kit. Running shorts for at night in bed or maybe knocking around town. I swear by a sleep pair of wool socks. Sock management is a little bit tough on a long trip, but have 1 pair that's always going to be dry that you can sleep in, because keeping your feet warm at night is one of the keys to being warm in general. And then this is a Patagonia Nano Puff jacket, synthetic, so that if it did get damp, it would dry out really quickly. I use this obviously for warmth and also for a pillow, and I guess I swear by a synthetic quilted jacket now. I was, no matter, even in the middle of the desert at night, it got cold, so always have a kind of a warmth layer with you. And then a basic wool hat and my wool army gloves that you get for $4 at the surplus store. I swear by in the winter and in general, just to throw over my gloves to keep some warmth, and a lightweight hat. One item that I was going to show to keep hands warm, these are a Gore-Tex overmitt. These are kind of a lobster style, but this is made by Arrow Stitch right here in Duluth, Minnesota. And I found that wearing these over my wool gloves was the way to go to stay dry on rainy days. And you just kind of put these underneath your rain jacket. But keeping your hands dry on, again, those days where it rains all day was super important. And these did a great job with just that light bit of wool underneath them was a great way to keep your hands warm when it was nasty out. That's a basic kit, and it's funny, I went out for 2 days and I think I had just about the same amount of gear that I had for a month, and I found that to be true whether you're doing a canoe trip or a bikepacking trip. All the basics are there, it just kind of depends on how you're going to eat your food. This type of travel, I don't have a stove or pots or anything like that. I had a lighter and that was about it, so you depend on food at gas stations and restaurants and wherever else you can get it. So it's a little bit different style of touring that way, and that's where it kind of adds to the race element. In general, before we go, the bike racing, I was a little bit hesitant to bring in an event that was racing under this because I truly believe in touring too, just like relaxing. But the time element adds another layer to travel on bike, and I still really like that idea of kind of going as fast as you can. Within reason, you know, again, this isn't Tour de France racing, but the main thing is to be on your bike as much as possible. So whatever stop you have, make it quick and make it efficient, you know, without being crazy about it. Of course, I stop for lunch and dinner, that type of thing. But if you stop 100 times during the day, that's going to really add up to some real loss of miles. So going 3 miles an hour on the bike is still 3 times faster than sitting on the side of the road, you know, having a bite to eat. So whatever you can do to slow roll or to keep on the bike and stay moving forward is going to get you to your destination faster. So I hope you found that somewhat helpful. Email me via the website at heckofthenorth.com, and I'd be happy to ask or answer any questions that might come up. Thanks again.